Good morning and welcome to our second of four webinars about HCI Solutions. As you can already hear, these sessions will be in English due to our Benelux audience we've chosen for this session. I'm Remco Lauwerijsens. I'm Business Development Manager for Lenovo at TD SYNNEX Netherlands, and I will be hosting all of our sessions. The sessions will be recorded and will be made available on YouTube by the beginning of next week, so you can watch it again or share it with colleagues. If you have any questions during the presentation that we're going to show you in a couple of minutes, please do not hesitate and raise your hand so we can unmute you, or just use the chat if you do not wish to speak. Today's speaker is Espen Stokke. He's Business Development Manager at Lenovo for Microsoft Azure Local. Good morning, Espen. And if you are ready, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Remco. Good to be here this morning. My name is Espen Stokke. I work with Microsoft Solutions inside of Lenovo. And I'm going to take you through what we can do in the world of Microsoft, what we see happening in the market, right? And there's so many possibilities and opportunities around, Microsoft infrastructure running in customers' data centers. So if there's one key takeaway, if you're unfamiliar with these kind of solutions, don't be worried because Lenovo, we got your back, right? It's just a matter of having a conversation with your customers, and then we can help you delivering something that works for them. So that being said, just a quick overview, Lenovo Infrastructure Solution Group, we have many solution areas all the way from edge to data center. When we talk about, strategic software partners, you see Microsoft is, of course, one of them, and that's where we deliver, think agile, software-defined, hyperconverged solution together, right? And just to express that, the relationship between Lenovo and Microsoft goes back decades, right? All the way back through the IBM times. So it goes from engineering all the way to the executive levels in between the two companies. So what we set out to do is to design, build, engineering a solution that works for customers. And there's a lot of customers in the market who have some concerns these days and looking around what to do with their on-premise infrastructure. And this article is, almost 1 year old today, but it's still quite relevant because we've seen a lot of these conversations coming from customers, right? So a lot of customers, as I said, are looking for alternative, virtualization platforms. Typically, they're looking for something, could be open source, but some customers are, of course, concerned about security around open source. And you see here, there's a significant amount of customers seriously considering to move away from VMware. And I think in due respect, I mean, we have to always respect, the legacy of VMware. It's a something that there's a lot of customers who have built know-how around tools and everything. But, seeing this change in the licensing model and everything, a lot of customers are now forced to look for alternatives. So in the world of Microsoft, when I talk about Microsoft solutions, right, there's actually many options and there's no one right answer for everyone. And we've been having this conversation with many different customers, right? So if you look at it from a really holistic level, right, what are the options for your customers? Well, they can move everything to the cloud. That's fine, right? Take your on-premise infrastructure, move it to Azure. That's one. But there might be some drivers that customer thinks, okay, maybe there's my workloads would drive a lot of cost in the cloud, or I have specific regulatory requirements, or I have latency requirements, or other requirements, so that I cannot move all my virtual machines to the cloud. Well, as I said, there's no one solution. So we're talking about then hybrid cloud. So you can have some workloads running in cloud and some running on Azure local hyperconverged infrastructure, where everything is connected and everything is managed from one single pane of glass. So you can manage and update your infrastructure from Azure, You can deploy your virtual machines from Azure, and it's truly a hybrid interconnected infrastructure solution for customers. But there's also some other options, of course. Customers who just looking to run virtual machine in a most cost-efficient way possible. We also need to keep in mind there's Windows Server hyperconverged infrastructure, or if some of you have heard about this, many years ago, Storage Spaces Direct, right? And why do we have these two kind of different platforms in the world of HCI with Microsoft technology? That comes actually from, looking back at the history, what Microsoft has built and what they set to do and what they're trying to help customer to drive, right? So the thing is, the Storage Spaces Direct or hyperconverged solution with Microsoft started already, back in 2016, but the software-defined storage was developed already in 2012. And that is a hyperconverged infrastructure that is now proven technology in the market, but it's always been continuously developed and further approved over the years for every abbreviation of Windows Server since 2016. But what happened in 2022, Microsoft said, okay, this is a great piece of technology, but we want to see how we can actually, help our customer in a hybrid cloud solution, right? And that's where they introduced the Azure Stack HCI, or now known as the Azure Local, which is really built for hybrid adaptive cloud infrastructure. And the important thing here, you see also here below that Lenovo, we've been there all the way. We followed all the Microsoft engineered programs back end since it was Windows Server software defined, and now we have the fully integrated solution with the premier solution for Azure Local Hybrid Cloud. So what basically happened is Microsoft made a decision back in 2021-22 to split the two solution into two separate product lines. So, the good news is inside of Windows Server today, you can still deploy, Hyper-V, Storage Spaces Direct, software-defined networking, and that you can even choose to ARC enable your virtual machines inside of that HCI solution. So it's really a cost-efficient platform for running VMs. So customers looking for, just moving your virtual machines over to a new platform, a hyperconverged platform. Maybe they're already familiar with the vSAN from Broadcom or other hyperconverged solution. This is a very cost-efficient way of doing it because usually they would need a Windows Server data center license to deploy, guest VMs on the platform anyway. So that is the use case for this one. It's really well-working platform. And the thing about Windows Server, since it's just a platform, you have to keep in mind, you as a partner need to help the customer to install it, or you can have Lenovo install it, or you can work with a systems integrator to deliver managed services on top of it to make sure it's maintained and everything. But we also have those tools available for you as a partner, so you can actually deliver that as a complete solution from Lenovo if you want to. Then we have the Azure Local part, the hybrid cloud, where it's more productized and built for Azure integration, as I mentioned, where ARC is actually mandatory and integrated not only to the virtual machines running in the cluster, but all the way down to the infrastructure. So you can really manage, update everything from Azure when you deploy Azure Local. And also, with Windows Server, it's updated every 3 years. Typically, with Azure Local, it's something that is going to be updated, 1 or 2 times each year with new features from Azure, new Azure services being available, and so on. So it's really a matter of what is the strategy of your customer, right? What direction do you see them going? What is the specific use cases for Azure? Is it a use case for Azure Local, or is it the use case for hyperconverged infrastructure using Windows Server? Now, the good thing about, since they're both having the same underlying core technology from an architectural point of view, we can actually build, the solution, whether they are Azure Local or Storage Spaces Direct, using the certified Lenovo Think Agile Amex platform, right? Typically, what I see is for data center solution, for customers looking for that big scalability, easy to add more nodes, and so on. Typically, we deploy this with all the software-defined storage traffic into the top of rack switches, and also the compute traffic into the top of rack switches. Now, this requires some, I would say, higher grade, enterprise ready, RDMA supporting switches, which is fine. That is available on Microsoft's pages, and you can check which one supports it. And then you can deliver something that is truly for the data center for those customers. But I think also where it fits really well in the SMB market or at the enterprise edge, specifically for Azure Local, is because you can actually run this storage traffic directly between the nodes, and you can scale for, even one node. You can have two nodes and three nodes being direct connected. Now that means that you can plug it into some much more or much less advanced top of rack switches and actually deploy it in a very small footprint. And typically what we see with these SMB customer or at the edge, the requirements for the top of racks is or what they already have there. It's not the most advanced one due to cost. So it's a really flexible platform in that way, whether you run it on Azure Local or storage spaces direct. But I think from a story perspective, it's always good to have the discussion, what is Azure Local? As I mentioned, it's really built to be a cloud-connected infrastructure, and it's enabled by Arc. And it's actually out-of-the-box cloud-based operation. What do we mean by that? Well, the entire deployment process, once you install Azure Local, already is being deployed from the cloud. So the first step you need to do is actually connect the nodes to your customer tenant, and then you go through that deployment process. It's a platform that is built for running virtual machines and container applications and other Azure services. And as I mentioned already, it's really built for having something that is right-sized. You can build it for the data center to some extent, or you can actually build for edge solution or SMB, right? It's really depending what your customers are looking for. Now, one key feature, of course, is security, and I will talk a little bit more about that in detail in a few minutes. But security is something that both Lenovo and Microsoft takes very seriously, especially in the what we see in the world today. So what are the use cases, right? So when you talk about customers, typically most of end user have some kind of infrastructure on-prem in combination with something running in the cloud. And I think that this is where the Azure Local is really strong. So if you have end customers that are already using Azure, looking for something to deploy in the data center, migrate from Broadcom or other platforms, Azure Local is usually a really interesting story for them to be told. But it's not really what Microsoft has set out to do in a broader perspective. It's not only to compete against Broadcom or deliver something in a data center. They have this much broader approach to connected infrastructure or adaptive cloud. So what we're trying to solve here together is looking at the entire technology environment of the customer outside of the data center, even seeing how we can deliver new modern technologies for IoT systems, so manufacturing, for example, data center, multi-cloud solution, and even edge use cases, right? And I think that is why Microsoft is actually seen as, the leader in the market when we talk about distributed hybrid infrastructure. It's because they have this capability, they have this technology with a legacy of, infrastructure solution, and they have this, capability from Azure with all those services that is built inside of the cloud. And you see here in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, we're probably going to see a new version pretty soon, but over the last 2 years, they were recognized as the leader in this segment here. So what is Azure Local? It's actually many things, right? So the good thing is we talk about Azure Local, we talk about connected hybrid infrastructure. And that's where Lenovo have our Think Agile MX in different versions for Azure Local to have some kind of connected infrastructure. And that is in general availability today. Now, what is going to come later, probably early next year, is what Microsoft calls Think Agile MX or Azure Local Disconnected Operations. So that is for more public sector customer who needs to be completely air-gapped from the outside environment. And Microsoft is going to introduce something for Azure Local where you can even run your Azure portal inside of your own data center. So keep an eye out for that. I mean, Ignite is coming up now in November, so we're probably going to hear more about this solution then. So how does Azure Local work? It's quite simple. You order your Lenovo Think Agile MX, you connect into Power and Network as described, and then it's being deployed from the Azure portal. And then you or your customer can install virtual machines and other workloads or Azure services on top of it. And the whole idea here is to use the Azure as the operation control plane for your entire infrastructure in your data center or at the edge. So this is just a broader view of some popular workloads. Again, we talk about Azure being the control plane. So you have all those tools that your customers know well, such as Azure Monitor, policy rules, identity management, and so on, running in Azure Cloud. And then you can easily deploy popular workloads on your own premises. So here you see, of course, Windows, Linux, Azure Virtual Desktop, so VDI solution for customers looking for alternatives as well. And even Azure IoT operation is certified for this platform. Of course, it's really built for databases with SQL, for example. It's a high performance platform. So if customers need something that runs fast to cater to the needs, Azure Local is also a really good platform for that. And there's some additional benefits here, like the managed instance here, that you can get patches and updates, for your SQL Server, much more automated rather than doing everything manually. And of course, you have your AI services. So we're talking about, machine learning capabilities, video indexing, and so on. That is, some of it is in preview, some of it is already available, but it's truly a platform that will be relevant for both the data center in SMB markets, enterprise edge, and also specific use cases for customers. So yeah, again, it's operated from the cloud, starting with the deployment process. So it's all about shifting, that responsibility on sites to a central IT. And we have several use cases here. Typically customers are looking for doing something more with less resources. And some customers told us, we have now a cloud department, we have a infrastructure department. With Azure Local, they're actually, they start to talk the same language, so it's more collaboration now than it was before. So that's also a very good use case for Azure Local. And it's really a one-click, update. So I mentioned Azure Local is something that is continuously updated. So you have here, if you have one or multiple cluster running Azure Local, you can do that update process from the cloud. So that really depends, of course, what kind of hardware you're running, and there's different levels of certifications. And I'm going to come back to that, what Lenovo can offer to really deliver that one-click experience for the end users. And of course, manageability across all locations. So getting telemetry data on your infrastructure, how it's performing, do you have any errors, is there something that needs to be maintained, and so on. You get all that data directly pushed into the Azure portal as well. I mentioned, security, and this is just as you see, a very holistic approach for Azure Local around security. And it's actually all starting about the requirement that Microsoft puts on us as a hardware developer. And it goes back, all the way to our security assurance certification and secure supply chain. And then, of course, we may need to make sure that the hardware platforms that we certified have all the capabilities to cater to the security features inside of Azure Local. And that is always available on the Think Agile MX. And then, of course, you have, encryption and data protection capabilities inside of Azure Local. There are tools such as, micro-segmentation and so on, and network security capabilities. And then, of course, I mentioned, all the Azure Defender and, Azure tools that you can add on additional security on top of the platform. So it's a really, through and through security built solution. And we have a lot of, customers who have been deploying this for many years. One of them is Yara. So again, this is more enterprise edge. I mentioned it's really well fit for, SMB or large SMB customers or customers who have a cloud first strategy, but they need to have something also on premise or specific use cases that they want to deploy inside of their own data center. Now, this is an enterprise edge. Yara, they have been running Azure Local now for over 3 years in all the manufacturing sites globally. And what they really gained was to take back control of the IT infrastructure from all these locations, because they had some shadow IT, they have OT people who needed some, quick delivery of a storage system, for example. But this one, they really regains control, and they have an increased security. And, by having that, single pane of glass from Azure, controlling all sites, so that the factory people, like the OT people, they could free up time and not be IT managers, and they actually were able to gain some additional efficiency and save money using this platform. So that's that. I want to say a little few words about, the Lenovo offering for Azure Local. I mentioned it slightly already, but, inside of the hyperconverged infrastructure with Microsoft, we have different levels of certifications. So it all comes down to the certified components. And then when you have a node that contains all certified components, we call that, from a Microsoft side, a validated node. And then you have an integrated system where we, as the hardware vendor, delivers drivers and firmwares from the platform for a 5-year period. And then you have the Premier solution. Now, the Premier solution is about the end user experience, because it's, first of all, it's delivered and supported on hardware and software from Lenovo. It's also, some features on Azure Local that is going to be only available for if customers are running it on Premier solution. And it will also deliver the before mentioned one-click update process with cluster-aware updates if you have a Premier solution. So this one is the one that is truly managed from Azure. The integrated system, I would say, works really well, maybe for the SMB markets as well, but there are some slightly more manual steps you need to take. So with the Premier solution, we have 2 platforms. We have, of course, the M650, MX650 2U machine built for the data center. And also we have something that is quite interesting. We have the ThinkAgile MX455, which is a more ruggedized edge server for Azure Local, also as a Premier solution. And these are currently our 2 platforms for Premier. So from the end user perspective, what is the differences? I want to talk a little bit about this update process. So let's say a customer buys a Lenovo ThinkAgile MX Premier solution. What will happen when Microsoft pushes an update for a new version of Azure Local? They will get a notification inside of Azure. So you see the cluster is ready and healthy to update. And then the customer will see that there is a package ready, and the cluster updates is also ready to start that update process. Then, of course, it would run through some validation and install it directly from Azure and push it down to your on-prem infrastructure. For an integrated system, you can also do the update process from the cloud, but you need to do some manual steps, meaning you need to go into the Lenovo best recipe support portal and download the package from there and put it on a cluster. So it's just 2 different ways for that update process. And that actually takes me to some licensing options, and that is also related to positioning of the solution, because you can license Azure Local in 3 ways. If you just install it, connect it to cloud, it will cost the customer $10 per month per core they are running. That's €9 per month. But in the enterprise segments, or maybe public sector customers, they might have Windows Server data center with software assurance under an enterprise agreement or a CSP agreement. If they have that, they can actually activate what's called the Azure Hybrid benefits, and the cost of Azure Local will go to zero. So already here, customer will actually save a lot of money if they have this combination. If they don't have that combination, we can always look into the third option, which is the Azure Local OEM license. So the Azure Local OEM license for Azure Local is only available when you buy it together with the hardware from Lenovo, right? But the good news is this is a perpetual license, so it will follow the life of the device, just as the OEM Windows Server or ROC license from Lenovo. It follows the life of the device. It contains both the Azure Local license, but it also contains the Windows Server 2022 license Data Center Edition. So customers can use this license and deploy as many virtual machines as they want. This one is available on some of our models, specifically on the integrated system. So I know that in the SMB market, for example, it's a really good value proposition. And I just want to mention for the one of you who are really paying attention, it says Windows Server 2022. There will be a OEM Azure Local license available later this year containing Windows Server 2025, but Microsoft will make available a free upgrade for Windows Server or the to Windows Server 2025 for customers who are buying the OEM Azure Local Hybrid SKU from Lenovo. So just be aware, you can start configuring this, you can start selling this quite easily, add it to the system, and you will find this license in the configurator, or you can ask Remco from TD Synnex here to make sure he adds it when he builds your node. It sits on the base configuration here, and it's what's called the OEM Azure Local Hybrid SKU here. So this one, as I mentioned, it's available in our integrated system category, MX650, 630 v4, MX650 v3, and 630 v3. So it's not available yet on the Premier system, this hybrid SKU. The main reason is these are more for the enterprise customer who wants to have that unified Azure experience with one-click updates, and those typically have a license directly from Microsoft or are already covered. But just for we are planning actually to introduce this later this year anyway, because there are some customers looking at having a perpetual license at the edge as well. I see we're running quite quickly out of time here, but I want to say a few things about sovereignty because I find it quite interesting. Earlier or just before the summer, there was an additional announcement from Microsoft about sovereign cloud. Again, Microsoft approach to sovereign cloud is you can either build additional tools and sovereignty capabilities inside of Azure. They also made some partnership in Germany and France for public sector customers to have a third-party sovereign solution for those customers. But what I found quite interesting is what they call sovereign private cloud. So what they announced is having Azure Local and also what they will call Microsoft 365 Local. So that means that we'll actually have a solution later. When it's going to be available, we don't really know yet. We don't have a lot of information yet. But basically, the customers will be able to use M365 on premise and also Skype for Business on premise. This will only be available for customers running Azure Local Premier. So again, if you have customers concerned about sovereignty, we can have that discussion with them and talk about our Premier solution and what we can deliver. Yeah, and just to understand, of course, there's different drivers for customers looking at sovereignty. It's can be a combination of all three, but we talk about confidentiality, integrity, availability, and I think the Azure Local is a really good fit because then you can have discussions about customers. how survival critical are your different workloads. You can move something to the cloud, you can keep something on premise. But if you have applications or data that is really critical for your survival and you want that sovereignty, you can definitely look at Azure Local. So that's why we have these sovereignty needs again. You see here on the far right, customers running inside their own data center, they can build that sovereignty. And the sovereignty can be used both for, as a solution for connected, so the hybrid motion, and also for those customers who need something that is completely air-gapped, right? So in summary, I want to say why Lenovo for Microsoft HCI solution. I talked a lot about Azure Local in this session, and I do think there's a lot of use cases for this solution. It's about customer who have a cloud strategy, looking to deploy or take advantage of Azure services on premise. If they're looking for a specific workload such as AVD, looking to easily migrate from for example a Broadcom platform over to a Microsoft platform. It's really fast and scalable. So typical use cases here, again, enterprise, edge, remote office, enterprise, SMB or large SMB customer, but really look for, customers who are already using Azure today or have Azure and have additional Azure use cases on premise. So what we sell here is either the Think Agile MX Premier solution, if customer wants that, fully cloud experience on premise, or the integrated system, if those customers are looking for something that can be somewhat maintained with a slightly more manual processes. And with the integrated system, keep in mind, we can also add the Azure Local OEM hybrid SKU that could also give you some additional revenue in that sales motion. Then, of course, never forget that, since it's the underlying same platform, the value proposition of Windows Server Data Center Edition HCI or Storage Spaces Direct, it's also a scalable, fast, and very cost-efficient way to deploy virtual machines. It's a slightly more, manual process of updating and managing it. But customers in the enterprise segment, for example, who have an IT organization and can maintain it, can be a really good target for this solution. Or if you can work as the systems integrator and you can design that solution on behalf of the customer, or work with a third-party systems integrator and deploy it. And here I would recommend selling the integrated system because the Premier solution wouldn't have any value for customers anyway. But keep in mind, we can also always sell the Windows Server Data Center Edition together to really make a complete solution here. But we could also deliver managed services. And that is one of the things I would like to mention here. I know there are really skilled systems integrator also in your region, Benelux region. If you don't want to work with them, or you want to have something that is very easy, we actually made a collaboration also with Accutex, who's recognized as a highly skilled partner for Microsoft, both on Storage Spaces Direct, but also on Azure Local. And this is available on all platforms. So we can share this flyer with TD Synnex, the full flyer. That is something that can be added to any Think Agile MX solution and deliver either full managed services with support on any platform. So if you have Storage Spaces Direct opportunity, you add this Accutech mesh SKU in the configurator, you will have something that is fully supported by Lenovo together with Accutech. So also together with this collaboration, we can do some sizing on your behalf. So if you have some information about the workloads of your customers, we can quite easily right size the solution, both for Azure Local and also Windows Server. So that is just a quick rundown for all the possibilities we have with Microsoft solution together with Lenovo. But this is just a summary of our proposition here. In addition to what we already talked about, we have very reliable servers. We heard from customers, partners, Lenovo does Azure Local and Storage Spaces Direct really well. We are always partner focused, so we'll sell everything, through the channel. And then we have, of course, the Xclarity, the management tools, and everything you will need. We deliver faster time to market. So let's say you are new to hyperconverged infrastructure with Microsoft. You can lean on Lenovo, you can lean on Accutech to really accelerate your capabilities to get that first deal. And we are here to help you. And as you see, we can deliver with the hardware categories and different solution. I think we can cater to most of the customer needs with the Microsoft hyperconverged infrastructure, all the way from data center solution, hybrid cloud solution, and in the future, even sovereign cloud solutions. So that was a very quick introduction to what is possible. And I hope you are, if nothing else, inspired to reach out to us, and we will help you win some business there.
Thank you, Aspen, for this great and interesting presentation. Before we go over to any other questions from people, I would like to share an incentive that we're launching for everybody who is in this webinar. I'm very excited to share that if an incentive that if you know to close a deal with us before the end of January, basically either in the Netherlands or in the Belgium or Luxembourg region, we will take you to out for dinner to an all-you-can-eat concept locally to your organization with a team of 10 people. So hopefully that will make you excited to present this to your customer. And I think it's a great proposition, and there's sure a lot of business for it with all the challenges that are going on in the world right now. So, are there any questions? So I'm going to unmute, and I'm going to allow the mic. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand or use the chat.
I wanted to thank Aspen also for the clear presentation. Thanks for that.
Thank you. And we're always here. If you have questions, maybe later, you can reach out as well, right? Happy to help.
I know.
I don't see any other hands or people talking, so I think you did a great job. We will share the presentation and the webinar, of course, later next week. So if any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out to your local contact at TD SYNNEX, and hope to see and speak to you all soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.